I'm Francis Chardo. I'm the District Attorney of Dauphin County. Marsy's law is an effort to make this a constitutional amendment that would put the rights of victims on an equal footing with the rights of defendants. It would give victims the ability to be heard in court and the right to be heard. Obviously defendants have the right to be heard. Victims have a statutory right, but they don't have a constitutional right to be heard. And so, by way of example, I've had instances where victims and victims' families have been sequestered from the courtroom. Defense attorneys have said they might be a witness in the case, so we want them sequestered. And the judge has ordered them to remain out in the hallway during the whole trial so they can get to see their own case being played out. And that's an injustice. This would give them the right to be present and to be heard in the case. And so it's an important constitutional provision, and this is the first step towards getting that made part of the Pennsylvania Constitution.
If they would be a potential witness, though, is there a way around that, or would that always be
there would be, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said that in extraordinary circumstances, due process, the federal due process right might say that we'd have to exclude the person. That would be an extraordinary circumstance. And so obviously the United States Constitution might require due process in certain circumstances, but that would be an extraordinary circumstance. In 99.9% of the circumstances, that is unnecessary.
And in Dauphin County, do all of the judges allow victims to give statements before sentencing?
Absolutely. We have a statutory right to be heard, and our judges are very good about respecting victims' rights. But making it a constitutional right ensures that their voice is going to be heard all over the place and in every single case.
And they're currently not notified of every hearing, are they?
Well, we make our best efforts to ensure that will be done. But suppose that there's an oversight. We couldn't require that the case be continued because they weren't notified. If a defendant wasn't notified of the case couldn't go forward. If this became part of the Constitution, if notification didn't go out, we could get the case continued because there wasn't notification.
My name is Angela Parker-Quarles, and I stand before you today in the loving memory of my goddaughter, Tarina Fields Price. In December of 2011, Tarina's life was taken by her husband, the father to her two youngest children. It was done in a very horrific way, and it left all of us hurt, devastated, lost, and with severe pain that we will never forget. Had it not been for the advocates and the prosecutors, we wouldn't have made it through that horrific ordeal. Marsy's Law for All will give victims a voice, will give them not just a seat at the table, but give them a voice to be heard, to equalize their rights with those that are committing these awful crimes. Marsy's Law for All will only equal the field in the criminal justice system when crimes are done against people.
Can you think of anything that was, during the process when that person was brought to justice? I'm assuming he was.
Yes.
Yes. Was the family allowed to testify at all, or to give statements before he was sentenced, or?
Yes. In our situation, we were fortunate, if you could call it fortunate. The perpetrator was caught, he was prosecuted, he did receive life. But through that process, there were many times that we wanted things to be different. We wanted to have a voice and to be heard in various areas, and we just couldn't because it would be in violation of the perpetrator's rights. And that was the most devastating part of the criminal justice system. But this law, Marsy's Law for All, will even that. It will allow victims the voice. It will allow victims the right to speak out, to speak up, to be heard.
Pennsylvania is only one of 15 states that does not provide constitutional protections for crime victims. While the accused and convicted have numerous rights codified in the Constitution, crime victims only have statutory rights. This creates a significant imbalance in justice because victims have no recourse when their rights are violated. Upon the successful completion of this campaign, I, along with my victim advocate colleagues, will never have to utter the phrase, "I am so sorry, but there's nothing else we can do for you," to a crime victim again. Most of you probably understand that when you're thrust into the justice system, there are many rights and services that come along with that process. Pennsylvania is home to, I believe, some of the best victim service providers in the country. For the offender, there are a litany of important constitutional rights to ensure a fair trial and representation. For the victim, there's statutory rights. We have good statutory rights. The problem is when you have a constitutional right and you have a statutory right, anytime something is challenged in court, that statutory right is going to collapse the constitutional right will collapse that statutory right every time. If those rights are violated for crime victims, we have no remedies. So we have rights without remedies. We, as a justice system, often add insult to injury time and time again when we don't enforce and protect the rights of crime victims. If a victim has failed to be notified of a court event, that court event goes on without them. If a victim is not informed that they have the right to restitution or to give a victim impact statement, which we've seen as of late in the Nassar case how vitally important the victim's voice is at sentencing, those events go on without them, without restitution being ordered and without the voice of the victim being heard. When an offender's right is violated, there is legal recourse. They can file motions with the court and challenge things that impact their case. However, when a victim's right is violated, there is no legal recourse. There's no motion to file. I cannot tell you how often families have said to me that their offender has more rights than they do, and they do. And the frustrating part is that they're the ones that are harmed. They're the injured people coming into a system that should protect and serve them. And when it fails them, that violation feels sometimes just as worse as the actual crime itself. Today, we seek to change that. Marsy's law will give victims standing in court. Marsy's law does not give victim veto. It doesn't give authority over the accused. It doesn't trample on the rights of the accused. What it does is it elevates the existing rights that we have in law and it codifies them in our Constitution. By implementing Marsy's law, we send a clear acknowledgement and understanding that in Pennsylvania, we value the rights of victims enough to enshrine them into our Constitution.